Hey everybody, Brian Zane here with my belated review of Ring of Honor's return to pay-per-view, Death Before Dishonor. It happened this past Saturday in Lowell, Massachusetts. I couldn't watch the show live. I had to catch up to it a little earlier this week. And, I really enjoyed this show. I got, not only was the wrestling great, and I'll talk about that as the review goes on, but I'm not going to lie, I felt a little nostalgic, a little bit of FOMO watching this thing and seeing this new version of Ring of Honor, the Tony Khan version of it, having been a part of it before the buyout. And, seeing the band back together, Ian Riccaboni, Caprice Coleman, Bobby Cruz out there. It was great to see them. Even the set, I think they did a good job kind of keeping it close and consistent with, what the set for ROH shows typically were last year and so forth. So yeah, definitely felt, kind of on the outside looking in for this one at times. And I appreciate people commenting and asking, hey, if and when are you going to be part of Tony Khan's Ring of Honor? It'd be really cool. I appreciate people, campaigning for that. And, all I'll say is I don't know if that's going to happen. I'm, hopeful and optimistic that I'll get other opportunities in wrestling as things go on. I loved my time in the original Ring of Honor. It was it's definitely the highlight of my career, I'd say. So yeah, will there be other opportunities to do that? I have no idea, but time will tell. But thank you all for those who have been kind of campaigning for it online. I appreciate it. The show begins in a big way with the Ring of Honor World Championship match as Jonathan Gresham defends against Claudio Castagnoli of the Blackpool Combat Club. Boy, watching this match on like a Tuesday or a Wednesday and seeing Jonathan Gresham coming out with the t-shirt, no robe, no foundation flag, no octopus skull mask, just Jonathan Gresham in a shirt, like boy, knowing what we know now, it just, in hindsight, it makes the match feel totally different. The match begins with a lot of good graps, as is expected by these two guys, just great holds and counter holds throughout. A few minutes into the match, as Cesaro is putting the giant swing on Gresham, suddenly Prince Nana makes his way to ringside. And if you didn't watch the pre-show, if you didn't watch 0 Hour like me, then you probably had no idea why he was out there, because they spent several minutes not talking about him after he shows up, and a long time goes by before they finally acknowledge his presence there. And it's not like he's hidden, but Prince Nana basically is now replacing Tully Blanchard in Tully Blanchard Enterprises. Why did he not show up during Gresham's entrance? Why was it several minutes late? There's a big size difference between the two, so Claudio's able to overpower him for a bit, but Gresham is tenacious, working the leg. Claudio able to deadlift Gresham from the outer apron back into the ring. And you know what? I will stand Jonathan Gresham here on this video. I think he looked great in this matchup. And again, hindsight being what it is, I think he still put on a great performance. Some of these ways he kind of attacks the leg and some of his counter moves to things are just so smooth and so unique and cool. It's different. But in the end, Claudio's too much for him. He hits all those elbows, the Ricola bomb. Claudio wins and becomes the ROH World Champion. It's Claudio's first world title. I give it 4 stars out of 5. This was a beautiful technical match, and I think it was really cool to see Castagnoli finally get his big moment, something that he was, more or less deprived of in WWE. I don't think that he necessarily had to be a world champion in that company, but I think he should have had more opportunities and should have been far more in the running than he was. And so I think that he winning the ROH World title here, it's a feel-good moment for sure. And so I'm curious to see what the ROH title will look like with he as the champion. It is unfortunate that things didn't work out with Jonathan Gresham the way they supposedly did. Reportedly, he and Tony Khan had a big argument over creative day of the show, and now it sounds like Gresham wants out of the business entirely, which I think is tragic. I think that if the biggest knock on Jonathan Gresham is his height, then I think that's a pretty flimsy argument when you consider other, short wrestlers who have done well for themselves. I think if it weren't for that, Gresham would easily be in contention with being a top, on everyone's list, not just the purists. I think that Gresham would easily be on the top 10 of everyone's list if they weren't so discerning of height. I think he is, like I said, everything he does looks so different than anything else I've seen. And even other equally technical wrestlers or submission proficient guys. Some of the counters and the things he does are just things I've never seen before or are pulled from the pages of some really obscure English, British match or Japanese match you haven't seen before. And I think it's just really cool. He's a really special talent. And yeah, I think it's unfortunate that things didn't go for him well in the ROH AEW world that he probably hoped. I think he did a great job holding the championship down during that interim period, defending it all over the world and really keeping the belt relevant while there was still this adjustment transition period between the ROH of old and the new one. So it's unfortunate. I hope this is not the end of of his time as a wrestler, because I think he still has a lot to give. Backstage, Daniel Garcia asks, who wants more rules? Who gives a shit about this Pure Championship division? He's going to take the Pure title and break it into 1,000 pieces on Dynamite. Well, with the news of the AEW Trios title coming soon, being fresh in our minds, let's bring up the ROH World Six-Man Tag title match as the Righteous, that's Vincent, Bateman, and Dutch, accompanied by Vita Von Star, defend against Dalton Castle and the Boys. The Boys are back, and they officially have names now. There's Brent with the black hair, Brandon with the blonde. That was the mnemonic that I got from Ian Riccaboni on the show. Dutch and Bateman with a lot of big physical moves against Brent. Dalton gets a hot tag, hits some big suplexes. He goes boy tossing, which actually starts out very quiet. The audience doesn't know what to do with it, but every time Dalton throws Brent or Brandon over the top rope repeatedly, it gets more of a reaction. So I think that was a really cool moment there. Caprice Coleman with the call of the night, where he says, Jesus turned water into wine. Dalton Castle's making people out of two people. Vita Von Star gets involved, goes for the Acai moonsault, but hits her own guys, but then Dutch leaps onto the Boys. Dalton on a big run, he suplexes Dutch, the bangarang to Bateman. Dalton wins it for he and the Boys, two-time six-man champs. I give it 3.5 stars out of 5. Thought it was a pretty good showing for everyone, including Vita at the end. I was kind of surprised, really, that Dalton and the Boys won this one. I know the Tate twins, Brent and Brandon, have been involved with AEW stuff, like on Dark, for instance, so maybe it's not that much of a surprise that they would be repackaged as the Boys and, and come back in the tag title scene here with Dalton. But I mean, Dalton is the star of that attraction. I think he's the one that needs to stay on TV at all costs, like if he can't be the TV champion, fine. Put him with the World Six-Man Tag title scene again. And I hope we get to see more of the Righteous as well. Sonjay Dutt, Jay Lethal, and Satnam Singh are decked out in white. Dutt explains that wearing all white in Indian culture is for attending a funeral, and he says Samoa Joe's reign and legacy will die tonight. Jay Lethal says Joe's got the choice between death or dishonor, and the choice has already been made for him. On we go to the ROH Pure Championship match as Wheeler Yuta goes against the hater of rules, Daniel Garcia. It's Blackpool Combat Club versus Jericho Appreciation Society again. I also liked Garcia wearing the maroon trunks, kind of a nod to William Regal, which they do acknowledge on commentary. Regal has joined the booth here as usual. The judges for this match are Ace Steel, John Walters, and Josh Woods. What is Josh doing wearing his mouth guard at ringside? Classic Josh. Some grabs to start things off here. Garcia hits a big ol' headbutt though. Garcia lifts Yuta out of a front face lock and launches him out of the ring. Garcia fighting hella dirty in this match. He bites Yuta in the ear, grinds his forearm into it, but Yuta grabs his ear back a minute or so later, hits a big missile drop kick. This one's a knocky draggy. We get a slap off at one point. Yuta almost wins by knockout. He hits the elbows later on. Garcia hits them right back. Garcia sits in with the sharpshooter, but Yuta counters out, which gets a huge pop. Garcia with the Regal stretch. Ooh, that's symbolic. But then Yuta hits the walls of Jericho to get back. We get the first rope break in about 15 minutes here. I love this finish here. Garcia is about to hit the stomps, but Yuta spits his gum in Garcia's face from down there, and that distracts Garcia, takes him out of it, and Yuta's able to capitalize and tie him up for a pinfall victory to win and retain. I thought that was pretty brilliant. Then after the match, they want to do the code of honor, but then Garcia throws up the single deuce and the double deuce, the ROH logo. I give this one 4 stars out of 5. Another great technical matchup. I loved the story they told here. I love the fact they went 15 minutes practically without a single rope break, and each side had 3 to use according to the rules, only 1 used the entire time. That was pretty clever. It's hard to pull that kind of thing off, by the way. I think the intensity was there. I loved some of the counters that we saw in this match. The fans also popped big for, which is great to watch as well. So yeah, good stuff overall. It's a first time ever matchup, the Battle of the Brothers, as Roosh takes on Dragon Lee. But why are they fighting? We'll hopefully figure that out later. The match starts out clean early on until Roosh hits a big old forearm in the moosh. Things pick up. Roosh, the dive to the outside, gets some stuff in, but then Dragon Lee comes back, hits a big dive of his own, then lawn darts himself outside the ring into the table. Holy crap. More big back and forth. Roosh suplexing Lee over the ropes. They have a chop off on the apron. Lee goes for his knee, but Roosh hucks him off the apron. Lee responds with a Hurricane Rana off the apron. He didn't get quite all of it. They milk the 20 count at the very end. They share a little moment before they go back to scrapping. Roosh hits the bull's horns. We get a kick out. How? A double stomp with a kick out at 1. The Incinerator's kicked out of. Roosh pulls the sympathy card to get the advantage, hits the bull's horns again to win. I give it 3.5 stars out of 5. I think that these guys are phenomenal athletes. They told a pretty good story and get the fans to be invested by the end. I thought there was some good athleticism and some good stuff on display here. My one knock on the match is it's a solid match despite a total lack of build and logic to it. Like, why are these two guys fighting? I mean, they're brothers, it's first time matchup, but like, you know, what was the reasoning for it other than to get a match on the Death Before Dishonor card? On we go to the Women's World Championship match as Mercedes Martinez defends against her longtime colleague Serena Deeb. Many counters in the exchange of holds. Deeb hits Martinez with a big old spear on the apron. Minutes later, they fight on the top turnbuckle. They tease a suplex, turns into a dragon sleeper, which then turns into a tree of woe and a big running dropkick. Deeb with a submission, but Martinez powers out. Martinez with a unique submission herself that ties up Serena on herself. They're kicking each other for a long time to get a response, but we've already seen that kind of spot done at least 2 or 3 other times tonight. They finally work their way to that spider German off the top turnbuckle. Deeb blocks the surfboard attempt by biting Mercedes' arm. A tornado DDT into the Serenity lock, which Mercedes gets out of. Mercedes traps Deeb's head into the turnbuckle, but not really. OG drop does not look good, but she gets the Dragon Sleeper back in, and Deeb taps. Martinez wins, and they has respect. The match kind of got rough by the end, but it shouldn't take away from the rest of their efforts in this match. I think their styles still meshed pretty well here. There were still moments of brilliance and good intensity throughout. So yeah, I think this match was pretty solid. A grudge match 17 years in the making for the World Television title as Samoa Joe defends against his former protege, Jay Lethal. Before the match officially begins, you get a big brawl between the two of them in the aisleway around the ring. Jay hitting 3 consecutive dives, which prompts Ian to quote Blind Melon.
And somewhere in that ancient mystic trinity, there was 3, because 3 is a magic number.
Satnam Singh jumps Joe, and they kind of Pillmanize Joe's arm. Singh is ejected. The match officially begins. They trade a lot of chops in this matchup here. Also some good athleticism peppered throughout. Joe hits the dive to the outside. Lethal back on the offensive. Keeps trying to go for the figure 4. Foreshadowing for Nashville, maybe? Lethal counters the muscle buster attempt. Hits the lethal injection. We get a kick out. Sonjay Dutt with a distraction. The belt shot, and Joe kicks out. Joe eventually catches Jay in that coquina clutch to win and retain. They did a really good job with the build of this matchup here, and I think the match was executed in a way that really reflects kind of the bitterness between these two. It definitely played out like a fight. Joe in this matchup, you know, busting out the big hits, but really not much beyond that, but still made it look good. I think the story they told before the match officially began with the brawl helped lead into it. I think it was a really fun finish. So yes, it was definitely a really cool match. I hope that we can see more of Samoa Joe. I hope he's not too hurt to work regularly. I think if you're the TV champion, you should show up on TV a little more often. But maybe they're waiting for whatever ROH TV deal comes down the pike. But it's definitely, yeah, I hope that we can see more of Joe as champion. I hope that it's still a fruitful reign. Main event times, the big rematch from Supercard of Honor earlier this year. It's a 2 out of 3 falls match for the ROH World Tag titles as FTR defend against the Briscoes. You know, great anticipation for this match. Obviously, the fans were cheering and going crazy when that first bell rang, when the first lockup happened. They were ready for this one for sure. The match starts out very slowly, evenly matched for a while. I love some of the commentary here when they talk about how the Briscoes have great non-verbal communication. They're grunting at each other as they're doing these things. It was the oh so subtle non-English communication. I thought that was great. Several minutes go by before we get a real exchange of roll-ups and near falls. This first fall is a grind, and I mean that in the most positive way. The Briscoes hit Dax with the Doomsday device. They get the first fall. Cash is knocked out for a good long while, so Dax has got to fend for himself for a while. Huge back suplex off the top onto Jay. Dax with a great hard tag to Cash. He's a house of fire. Jay dinks Cash the ring bell, but Cash somehow kicks out. Valiant comeback by FTR. They hit Jay with a big rig to knot it up. By this point, all 4 guys are bleeding from somewhere on their body, bleeding from their face, from their chest, bleeding from their wherever. It's crazy. It's a very physical, very draining matchup here, and they really tell the story well here. At one point, Dax laying out Paul Turner. Each team has the chance to win, but they don't. Jay kicks out of the big rig, first time that's ever happened. Another Doomsday device, but the pin's broken up. Mark and Cash try doing the suplex over the ropes. They can't quite pull it off. Mark hit with a super back suplex through the table on the outside, and they're both gone after that scary landing. Dax kicks out of the Jay Driller. We get a second rope pile driver to Jay. The cover. FTR wins the third and final fall to retain. I give this one 5 stars out of 5. Best match of the night and a great sequel to what's arguably the match of the year. here with FTR and the Briscoes in Dallas. Was this one better? It's hard to say right now. I would say, you know, I'd have to go back and watch the Dallas match to be sure, but at this point, I'm going to put them, you know, 1A, 1B. They're really, really close to each other, and I think that they recapture that magic. You know, you get the Briscoes, FTR together, you're going to have tag team magic, and I love the emphasis on Dax. You know, he's really been kind of the hero of this team, you know, whether he's the one who does the singles matches, he's the one who's got these passionate babyface promos, he coined the term fight like an 8-year-old girl, and I think that was just really cool. So for him to be the hero of this one again, I think kind of leads into that more. But yeah, this was a great, great main event. FTR celebrate after the match is over. They have a short promo. Then we see William Regal, Claudio Castagnoli, and Wheeler Yuta on the stage having a good old stare down. What could that mean? My grade for Death Before Dishonor is a B+. Another very strong showing from Tony Khan's version of Ring of Honor. I think that, you know, they did a great job with the matches and the flow. I think that the announce team was great. It's been a personal bias on my part, but I stand by that. I loved the world title match, even though there's a bit of kind of like sadness over it, over Jonathan Gresham for me. Pure Championship match was great. I loved FTR versus the Briscoes. They kept it rocking, and Joe and Lethal was a fun match as well. My one real nitpick about this show is just the way they kind of gave away Roosh and Dragon Lee with no real build, and you could have that matchup and have it be awesome and have great story to it. Hey, brother versus brother, that's great, but you know, give me another reason they're fighting, because there really wasn't one on the show. But besides that, I think it was, yeah, very, very cool showing here. Starting the show strong, ending the show strong, having some good moments in the middle. Damn solid pay-per-view, and you can't ask for much more. So I'm very excited to see where this version of ROH goes from here and what their next offering will look like. But what did you all think of the show? I want to hear what you have to say in the comments section below. Once again, I apologize for the tardiness of this review. I know this is a few days late, and unfortunately, the same thing is probably going to happen with my SummerSlam review. I will be in Nashville for the whole STARRCAST shebang, but I'm not sure if I will have the time or the energy to watch and review SummerSlam, you know, from my hotel room or whatever. I will do my best to get that out, but if I can't, it will have to be delayed similar to this show, and I apologize for that in advance. So bear with me, folks. Again, if you're going to be in Nashville, I hope to see you there for STARRCAST and for Ric Flair's last match. And until then, folks, I'm Brian Zane. I will see you next time.